In the dead of night, as the wind howled through the trees, Mira's antique shop stood silent. Among the dusty trinkets and forgotten relics sat a porcelain doll, its pale blue eyes gleaming faintly under the moonlight. Evelyn was no ordinary doll. She had a presence, a heaviness that seemed to fill the room even when no one was near. It started with whispers, soft as a breath, calling Mira's name from the shadows. At first, she thought it was her mind playing tricks, but then the doll began to move. And when the first scream echoed through the town, Mira realized Evelyn was far more than just a relic of the past. The doll wasn't just haunted, it was alive, and it was waiting. Mira loved antiques. Her tiny shop on the outskirts of Holloway was filled with peculiar objects, things that whispered stories of forgotten times. One cold autumn morning, she stumbled upon a peculiar estate sale deep in the woods. Among the dusty relics, Mira's eyes fell upon a porcelain doll. The doll was exquisite, yet unsettling. It had an impossibly perfect face with crimson lips, pale blue glass eyes, and golden curls framing its face. The craftsmanship was flawless, but what drew Mira was its attire, a deep crimson velvet dress with tiny lace trim, looking surprisingly pristine despite the decay surrounding it. "She's yours for free," muttered the elderly seller. His voice trembled, and his gaze darted nervously between Mira and the doll. "But be careful, she doesn't like being ignored." Mira laughed nervously, assuming the old man was indulging in local superstitions. She named the doll Evelyn and brought her home. At first, Evelyn seemed like an ordinary doll. Mira placed her in the shop window to attract customers. Strangely, business began to pick up. People entered the shop claiming they felt drawn by something. But then, the whispers began. At night, Mira heard soft, unintelligible murmurs in her home. At first, she dismissed them as creaks of the old building. Yet every morning, Evelyn appeared in a new location, always watching Mira with those unblinking eyes. One night, Mira awoke to a chilling whisper near her ear. "Mira, play with me." She jolted upright, her heart racing. Evelyn was on the chair by her bed, her tiny porcelain hand pointing at Mira's face. Terrified yet curious, Mira began researching Evelyn. She discovered that the doll belonged to a girl named Clara, who had vanished over a century ago. Local legends claimed Clara was a strange child with a gift for speaking to the dead. The doll was said to have been her conduit, a vessel for restless spirits. Mira's unease deepened when she found a photograph of Clara holding the same doll. The doll's face in the picture looked subtly different. Its once calm smile now bore a sinister smirk. One evening, a man named George entered the shop, captivated by Evelyn. He insisted on buying her, offering a generous sum. Reluctantly, Mira agreed. That night, the whisper stopped, and Mira slept soundly for the first time in weeks, but George didn't. The next morning, he was found dead in his home. Witnesses reported seeing him the previous night, clutching the doll and screaming, "It won't stop whispering!" The police returned the doll to Mira, who locked it away in the basement. Yet the whispers returned, louder, more persistent. Desperate, Mira sought the help of a local historian, Dr. Elara Graves. Together they performed a seance to uncover Evelyn's truth. As the room grew cold, Evelyn's glass eyes began to gleam, and a child's voice filled the air. "She's coming," the voice whispered. "She wants to play." Suddenly the lights shattered, plunging the room into darkness. Mira felt tiny, cold hands gripping her arm. Screaming, she lit a candle, revealing the doll now standing upright, her face contorted into a malevolent grin. "Burn her!" Dr. Graves shouted. Mira hesitated, but then threw Evelyn into the roaring fireplace. The doll's porcelain skin blackened and cracked, emitting an ear-piercing scream. As Evelyn disintegrated, the whispers ceased. Mira thought she was free, but the next morning, she found a small shard of Evelyn's porcelain face on her doorstep. That night, as she lay in bed, she heard it again, a faint, chilling whisper. "Mira, let's play." As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Mira thought she was free. The doll was gone, reduced to ash in the fire. But as she stepped outside, a chill ran down her spine. There, on her doorstep, lay a small, shattered piece of porcelain, an eye, still gleaming with that same unsettling blue. And then, in the stillness of the morning air, she heard it, a soft, familiar whisper, as chilling as the first. "Mira, let's play." The game had only just begun. Mira tried to escape, to flee the nightmare that had rooted itself in her life. She locked the doll's remnants away, moved to another town, even changed her name, but it never stopped. The whispers followed her in her dreams, through her waking hours, and in every creak of the floorboards at night. No matter how far she ran, the doll's cold presence lingered like a shadow. One evening, as Mira sat by the window, her eyes drawn to the distant horizon, a sudden chill swept through the room. Her breath fogged the air, and the unmistakable sound of porcelain scraping against wood echoed in the silence. Slowly, she turned, heart pounding. There, in the reflection of the window, was Evelyn, standing in the center of the room, her cracked face now perfectly restored. Her glass eyes locked onto Mira's, unblinking, filled with an unmistakable hunger. And then, the whisper came, louder than ever before, ringing through her bones. "I'm never letting you go." Mira's scream was swallowed by the darkness, as the doll's twisted smile stretched impossibly wide, sealing her fate forever. The game was over for her, but it had just begun for the next victim. They say some objects carry the weight of their history. Forgotten by time, left to gather dust, they sit silently, watching, waiting. But some objects should never be found, never touched. And among them was a doll, a porcelain doll with eyes so lifeless, yet so aware. What began as a simple relic in an old shop would become the source of unspeakable terror. This is the story of the doll no one could escape. In a quiet, unassuming town, nestled between thick, shadowy woods, there lived an elderly woman named Clara. Clara ran a tiny antique shop filled with relics of the past, aged clocks, dusty books, and forgotten toys. One particular item sat prominently in the corner, a porcelain doll with glassy, lifeless eyes. Its hair, once golden, had faded to an ashen yellow. The doll seemed wrong. Customers avoided it, often remarking that it felt as though the doll was watching them. But Clara never sold the doll. She kept it for a reason, a secret she had never shared. She claimed the doll was her late daughter's favorite toy. But late-night visitors to the shop often reported hearing whispers. Some even swore they saw the doll move, its head subtly turning toward the door as they entered. Clara denied these claims, but her pale face and trembling hands told another story. One fateful day, a young couple entered the shop. They were drawn to the doll, its eerie charm oddly mesmerizing. Despite Clara's protests, they purchased it. That night, the doll sat on a shelf in their living room, its lifeless eyes reflecting the flickering light of the television. But something about the room felt different, colder. The couple soon noticed strange occurrences. At night, they would hear faint footsteps echoing through the halls, though no one was there. Objects moved on their own. A vase toppled, books fell from shelves, and lights flickered inexplicably. Worst of all, the doll seemed to change positions. Sometimes it would be turned toward the hallway, as if waiting for someone to pass. One stormy night, the wife awoke to the sound of soft laughter. Thinking it was the television, she went downstairs, only to find the doll sitting on the coffee table, staring directly at her. The air grew icy, and as she stepped closer, she swore the doll's lips moved. A whisper, faint but clear. "You can't leave." Terrified, the couple decided to get rid of the doll. They threw it into a bonfire in their backyard, watching as the flames consumed it. But just as they began to relax, a chilling realization dawned on them. The faint laughter hadn't stopped. Turning back toward the house, they froze. The doll was sitting on the windowsill, unharmed. No one knows what happened to the couple after that night. The house stands abandoned, windows boarded up, but locals still report strange occurrences. Some claim to hear laughter when passing by. Others say they've seen the doll sitting in the window, waiting patiently for its next owner. They say some objects are cursed, carrying with them the pain and malice of past owners. The doll remains a mystery, a reminder that some things are better left untouched, and some secrets are meant to stay buried. Over time, the doll became the stuff of local legends. Teens dared each other to approach the house, leaving trinkets or food on the porch as offerings. Some swore they saw the doll's eyes blink, while others claimed their offerings disappeared by morning. One boy who touched the doorknob was later found wandering the woods, muttering incoherently about a voice in the dark. Years later, a traveling antiques dealer came across the house, unaware of its reputation. Drawn to the doll's craftsmanship, he took it with him. Almost immediately, strange events began to plague his travels. His car would break down on empty roads. He would wake up to find the doll sitting on his bedside table, though he left it locked in a case. One night, he tried to sell it at an auction, but no one bid. The room grew colder, and the lights flickered as whispers filled the air. Desperate, the dealer returned to the house and left the doll on the porch, hoping to rid himself of its curse. As he drove away, his rearview mirror revealed a chilling sight. The doll was no longer on the porch but standing in the middle of the road, watching him leave. That was the last time anyone saw the antiques dealer or his car. The doll remains a dark mystery, its origins unknown. Some say it belonged to a grieving mother who cursed it with her sorrow. Others believe it is an ancient relic, housing a restless spirit. But one thing is certain, anyone who encounters it is marked, and the doll is still out there, waiting. Perhaps the next time you see an antique shop, a flea market, or an old forgotten house, you'll think twice before picking up something that calls to you. Because sometimes, objects are more than just things. They're waiting, watching, and hungry for a new home. Beware the doll. Beware what might be waiting for you. The doll still waits, patient and unyielding. Those who have crossed its path are gone, their stories swallowed by whispers in the dark. But the doll remains, its cracked smile a promise, its glassy eyes unblinking, and maybe, just maybe, it's waiting for someone like you. Because cursed things don't just disappear. They find a way back. They always do. You might think the story ends here, that the doll has returned to its prison, its thirst for fear and chaos satisfied. But stories like this don't have endings. They only spread, creeping into new homes, new lives, and maybe yours. You may think the doll is trapped here, left to gather dust and fade away. But cursed objects are never truly forgotten. They wait. They bide their time. Because the moment you think you're safe, the moment you think it's over, that's when they find you. Months passed after the doll returned to the abandoned house, but cursed things have a way of being found. A family, eager to start fresh, bought the old property, drawn to its low price. They had no idea of the terror that lay waiting for them. Their young daughter, Sophie, was the first to notice the doll, hidden in the attic, her tiny hands brushing off decades of dust. At first, Sophie loved the doll. She called it her special friend. She played with it, spoke to it, and even insisted it sit at the dinner table. Her parents thought it was harmless, just a child's imagination. But soon, they began to notice strange things. Sophie talked to the doll even when she was alone. They heard her whispering at night, responding to something they couldn't hear. It wasn't long before the family realized the doll wasn't just a toy. The whispers they thought were Sophie's voice now echoed through the house when she wasn't even in the room. Doors slammed shut on their own, and shadows flickered across the walls, even when no one was near. The mother tried to throw the doll away, but every time, it reappeared, always sitting on Sophie's bed, waiting for her. By the time they realized the danger, it was too late. Sophie began to change. She stopped eating, stopped speaking, and spent all her time in her room with the doll. Her once bright laughter was replaced with blank stares and soft murmurs. The family tried to intervene, but something, or someone, was always watching. One night, the father woke to the sound of laughter echoing through the house. Soft, high-pitched, and chilling. Following the sound, he found Sophie standing in the living room, holding the doll. Her face was expressionless, her eyes empty. When he tried to take the doll from her, she screamed, an unearthly, piercing sound that shook the walls. Lights flickered, and shadows danced violently as the doll's head turned, on its own. They fled the house that night, leaving everything behind, but even now, they say Sophie's laughter can still be heard echoing through the halls. And the doll, well, the doll remains, waiting for the next family to claim it. Months later, the house was sold again, this time to a young woman named Emma, who planned to renovate it. She found the doll sitting in the attic, its lifeless eyes glinting in the dim light. Thinking it was valuable, she brought it downstairs, placing it on the mantelpiece. Emma dismissed the strange noises at first, chalking them up to the creaks of an old house. But the doll's curse was patient. It didn't need to act immediately. It only needed time. The doll's story isn't over. It never is. Some objects carry the weight of evil. An evil that can't be destroyed, only passed on. So the next time you find something old, something forgotten, remember this. Not all treasures are worth keeping, and some should be left alone, forever.